Hi, this is Bob Perkins coming to you from Inside Sales Studio right here in Gold Canyon, Arizona. We're going to continue our series on women in sales and women in leadership. And I'm so happy to have Megan Dahlen with us today. Hi, Megan. How are you?
Hey, Bob. Good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
It's great to see you again. Megan is the general manager of Inside Sales at Microsoft. What we'd like to do is just to get started, Megan, for those that may not be familiar with you and your background, could you share a little bit about your history with Inside Sales and then your current position with Microsoft?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been in the industry around 12 years now, started actually as a frontline business development rep, qualifying leads for an outside sales rep. And my career began at a place called Epicor, which was publicly traded at the time. And I grew through various roles, including being an independent quota-carrying rep, both inside as well as in the field, and then bounced back into management, running a U.S. team and eventually evolving into a global role. I then bounced to Infor, had the opportunity to consolidate and scale their global organization, both on the business development side, but also the inside sales organization. In the last 6 months, I've been here at Microsoft preparing the infrastructure and building the capacity and capability to run a larger centralization and an optimization project globally through all of their lines of business.
That's great. And, you know, Megan, you and I first met when you were at Infor, probably something like 3 years ago.
Yes.
And we had an opportunity to get to know each other a little bit. You've attended some AISP conferences, but what we're here to talk about today is a topic near and dear to my heart. And we're really on a mission at the AISP to help women advance their careers. Specifically, we know through research that we have a shortage of mid to senior level managers, leaders, and we know it's male dominated. And we'd really like to see more women advance just like you have advanced in your career. And what a career you've had over the past just few years. You've really done a wonderful job gaining experience and knowledge, and you've moved into positions of greater responsibility, really, to help shape the profession of inside sales. Talk to us a little bit, maybe share some, you know, the things that you did in your own career to advance to such prominent positions in inside sales leadership.
Yeah, so I think one of the pieces that is sometimes talked about but not talked about in enough depth in women leadership conversations is taking calculated risks. So there's many points in my career at which I was building or leading a sales organization and began to feel kind of comfortable. It ran on its own. You had great leaders underneath who were running the day-to-day operations. And I think oftentimes, whether it be women or men, you begin to feel comfortable. You can step back and it just kind of runs. I've made some very calculated and conscious decisions as my organizations have gotten to that point to reach out and ask for additional responsibility. And I think that feeling comfortable in asking for expanded responsibility, or in my case, oftentimes it was taking a risk to move organizations completely, which means things like uprooting my family, very things that impact the personal side. I don't think that piece is talked about enough in terms of helping women understand how to take calculated risks and be comfortable with how uncomfortable that feeling feels. And so I think it's one of the things I work with all of the female leaders who I'm bringing up through the organization, and even down to the rep level, when they don't feel comfortable with the next step of advancement, really getting them to be, teaching them how to make calculated risks.
A really good point. I wrote down a couple of things, taking a calculated risk, ask for responsibility. I know in my own career, I did that many times. And as I mentor others around moving into leadership, I say start by asking for more responsibility, because there's always so much to do, and bosses out there love it when people come up and say, hey, can I take on more? So
Yeah.
that's a really good point. There's another statistic I wanted to mention, and you sort of touched on it, and I think it goes along with this calculated risk piece, and it goes something like this. I forget where the source of it is, but it goes something like, if a man feels they have 30% of the experience and skills, they'll still apply for a job, but a woman wants to have 80, 90, 100% of what's required before they raise their hand.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that at all?
Yeah, you absolutely see it at every level in a sales organization. You know, I was just having a conversation with my sister, who's a frontline rep, and just yesterday, and she said, "Look, I don't feel confident. I don't feel comfortable. I don't know the product I'm going to go sell." As she's applying for a field role, and it's really kind of pushing the conversation to say, look, all the other candidates applying feel the same way you do, and you need to be comfortable in that, because regardless of the role, you're never going to grow as a leader without taking that risk and that additional responsibility. And that comes with, having bandwidth to then apply yourself to fill that gap. Sure. I often remind female reps in particular that gap they feel exists across all of the candidates, right? They're just like everyone else. And I think that reassurance and translating that then into their own confidence helps them make that next step.
That makes a lot of good sense. So, put your hat in the ring, raise your hand. I was speaking with Amy Appleyard, VP of Staples Business to Business, and she left us with a tip. Just raise your hand. Say I'll take that on, or I'll take a little bit of a chance and apply for this position. Okay, let's sort of switch gears a little bit, and let's do a little bit of rapid fire questions. And you might have a one-word answer, or you may expand on a little bit, but I'll try to fire a bunch of leadership questions at you, and then we'll move into tips specifically for women. Okay. So, as a senior leader, right, you manage managers, you manage other leaders. What do you think the one attribute or trait of a good senior leader is?
Ooh, that's a great question. So I think it's a mix between the right mix between strategy and execution. And I think it's often the mix we talk about as leaders move up through the ranks is, you can't lose sort of your eye on what it takes to execute and drive the number.
Yeah.
But you have to begin to develop that strategic side for them to see things at a bigger picture.
You sort of touched on this earlier in our conversation, but let's talk about, you made the comment, I built the team and I sort of let it grow. What's the difference? What's a difference or a couple differences between someone who manages on the front line, they manage reps, and a VP, let's say, that manages managers?
Yeah, so there's a movement from the me as a rep, all I care about is me and my territory and driving my number, to the we, right, my team and I type concept, to then the us. And I think the us expands as you grow within the organization in a leadership capacity. It can begin with sort of the team you're managing and the managers, but oftentimes the us begins to include your field counterparts, your the P&L, right? The executive team, and that's the biggest bridge, I think, from a frontline manager to that next level, or depending on the size of the organization, is you have to be able to open up to the us. You have to show your concern about profitability and margin and those pieces that make the world go round in business.
That's good.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Good points. Okay. Let's move into sort of things that women can do, right? And if they want to follow kind of your career aspirations, right? And I know you have a lot of women that look up to you. Let's shoot out some tips. What's something they can do this week, they can do today, if they're listening to this episode? What can they do to help advance their career? Some actionable tips.
Yeah, so I think one is they need a good mentor, whether it be male or female. And in a mentor, I sort of say that mentor then either needs to be a sponsor or they need to find a sponsor. So someone who's not only going to help them develop, but someone who, when there's discussions around the table on advancement opportunities, they have someone at the table who's willing to speak up for their capability.
Yeah.
And I think women need to think about kind of the larger picture as it kind of relates to your personal life intertwined with business. It's often not, I think it's not talked about enough, but in closed door sessions, there oftentimes are conversations, and I know I've been on the back end of those conversations saying, can she really handle more? You know, she has a husband and 3 young children, and until you speak up and say, look, I can and I will, you always have that wall in front of you. So I always encourage women leaders to address that stigma kind of up front, to say I'm not only capable of handling more, but I want to handle more, and I can handle it in the capacity of my bigger life picture. It then eases, I think, eases the conversation between hiring managers and leadership when they verbally committed to that type of growth.
So what I'm hearing you say, you mentioned a couple things. If you don't have a mentor today, it's a good idea to seek out a mentor, but more importantly, a sponsor. So just describe the two differences, if you would, for a minute.
Yeah, so I think I always view a mentor as someone who will help you navigate, give you career advice, someone you can go to kind of ask questions. A sponsor is someone sitting at I call it the round table, whatever that table may be,
right.
Who are directly influencing hiring decisions. And it's someone who's going to speak up and put you on the forefront and be a voice for you when you're not in that room.
Sure.
In hopes of their goal, ensuring that you're in that room someday. And for me, that's been an important part of my own development. I thought that would come naturally. And I found out I've actually had to seek that piece of it out more. The mentors come very naturally. People feel comfortable mentoring behind the scenes, but to be a sponsor, they really have to believe in your capabilities, your personality, your morals, all of that encompassing, and that's a much deeper relationship.
And I think as I've been a sponsor myself to a number of individuals, many of who were women, and sometimes I really get behind a certain individual because I want to see them move up in my own organization, because it'll help build a better leadership framework. But at the same time, it's always about helping them advance. And even if it means sponsoring them to a bigger and better job away from your organization, that can help too. You touched on a number of things here, which is great. I'll sort of just go back and pick out a few things. You talked about, ask for more responsibility. You talked about take some calculated risks. Raise your hand, even if you think you don't have everything that the job is requiring, right? Things like that. As we conclude today, do you have any final tips or thoughts for the women in particular that are watching here that, they say, boy, someday I when I move my career up into leadership? Any final thoughts at all?
Yeah, I would encourage and sort of challenge all women sales leaders and even men out there is that, begin by setting a good example in staffing diversity within your own organizations. I think it starts with, proving that you're a role model and you have not only that recruitment and staffing diversity mix figured out, but also the retention and growth aspect. That's missing in the industry, and I think it starts with everyone taking initiative to prove that they can not only do the recruitment at the front end,
Right.
at level reps, but grow them within the organization. We're not going to fix some of the challenges in the industry by recruiting senior female leaders and plugging them in. We really have to start grassroots up and develop. So take the initiative and own it every day.
That's great. What a good thought to conclude with, right? If you're a leader, just a leader out there, we know there's more men, mid to senior leaders than women. So this is for men and women, right? Megan's advice is develop, nurture, mentor, encourage, help move specifically women along a career path if that's their desire. So we got a lot of work to do. That's a great challenge. And I want to thank you, Megan, so much for taking 20 minutes out of your day to be on the Inside Sales Studio. Good luck with 2016, and hopefully we'll see you at a future AISP chapter meeting or conference in the future. So,
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Megan. Have a good day.
You too.